一生負けんのままか決めんのはお前だ。
Don't write about this.
Ansel, JT, good afternoon. How are you, sirs?
We're wonderful. Very excited to be here talking about Tokyo Vice, and I like your background.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm on this bus with a bunch of cool guys. So excellent series, guys. I'm 2 episodes in, just spectacular. What I took away from this series is the culture shock I was in, because we're actually in Japan, you know, the customs, the norms. And I mean, I felt like I was there. And, you know, Ansel, Jake is the ultimate fish out of water, going where no Western journalist has gone before, a Tokyo newspaper. I was wondering what kind of culture shock you had when you were in Japan.
Absolutely. You know, not only was I in Japan and, you know, on a movie set with mostly a Japanese crew and, you know, living in Tokyo, but we were there during COVID when no one else was allowed. So there was no tourists. And it really felt like probably how Jake felt in, you know, this show takes place in the 90s. So in 90s Tokyo, it was less westernized and even more of like, Jake even felt like more of a fishy out of water. So, you know, during COVID, we both had that experience, but it was just great. Exactly what we needed for the show, because we wanted the show to feel authentic and, you know, as an actor to feel immersed in the culture for real was really important for being able to portray the character in an authentic way.
And JT, you know, the series is based on the novel by Jack Adelstein, his true life adventures. Did you have him on board? Was there many discussions about the novel and translating it to the screen?
Well, Jake and I met in driver's ed in Central Missouri in high school. So we've been friends ever since. And, you know, I even got pulled into the story because I was one of his friends threatened by the Japanese mob on the phone when they were trying to get to him a number of years ago. So we talked about this project for years, and he'd always been enthusiastic about me making something of it. And he basically gave me carte blanche: change what I want, invent what I want, combine what I want, but please just be authentic. And you know, that was a great charge and a real responsibility. And he, you know, he let me do what I wanted to do, and he was there to answer a million questions in the way that he could be there for questions, you know, from our leading actor, from me as the writer, the showrunner. He was incredibly helpful.
And Ansel, you know, Jake works the crime beat, but I was surprised at the line, "There are no murders in Japan." Do they hide bad news from the public in Japan, or is it a form of censorship?
I think, you know, the no murders in Japan thing has to do with, you know, that's illustrating a certain level of insinuated corruption that's going on in the police force, because, you know, they want to clear the cases. So if they consider it a murder, it's very difficult with all the hoops you have to jump through. Sometimes in Japan, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. All the hoops you have to jump through, that, you know, to call it murder is we don't call it murder. So basically, you know, the reason why I think that's brought up in the pilot, and maybe JT can speak on this better, is just to give, you know, Jake the feeling of, where am I? How do things work here? You know, in what world are we in where that's not clearly a murder? And for Jake to have that kind of frustration and challenge to try to overcome, and also for him to like push up against that, because other Japanese journalists, and, you know, especially if you're young in Japan, it's a linear society. You answer to your superiors. And if someone's going to say, "Hey, that's not a murder," you're going to say, "Okay, that's not a murder." But Jake is an American young guy who's saying, "What are you talking about? That's not a murder. He was clearly murdered. What do you mean?" And that in itself creates interesting, funny drama.
Yeah, it's important that, right, spot on. Ansel's right. I mean, it's important for me in writing the pilot is that you want Jake, and thus the audience, the Western audience, to be thrown into the, by Western standards, in quotation marks, strangeness of this world, where a murder is not a murder, where you get to ask who, what, when, where, but not why, when you're writing as a you know, a cub reporter. And elements like that to say, look, we're not in Kansas anymore, and you, Jake, and you, audience, have to adapt because you're visiting here, they're not visiting home, you know, our home.
Tokyo Vice, streaming on HBO Max. Gentlemen, what an incredible series. I appreciate your time today, and let's talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Would love that. Take care.
Thank you.